was just watching an older Democracy Now! Because I was trying to run down information about that Connell guy who died in the plane crash, Carl Rove's IT expert, and wanted to see if Democracy Now! Had done something on it that I had missed, and indeed they had. They had a guy who's a regular commentator on their show there, Mark Crispin Miller, because he does good stuff on elections, and as he points out, this is all about elections. For those of you who have not heard anything about this yet, this was a guy who was Karl Rove's right-hand man, and most people think that it was because he was very, very religious, very extremely anti-abortion. In fact, at one point, he said so explicitly that he had he supported Karl Rove to save the children. This guy was did computer stuff and was totally involved in Florida in 2000, Alabama, Siegelman in 2002, and in the 2004 Ohio election. In fact, his organization was in charge of getting all the votes together from the Ohio precincts, and then they sent that information off to a couple of other private companies, Smart Tech and somebody else, and then they sent that information back, and of course nothing happened in the interim, and it had to go off-site. And this is basically how the vote shaving took place that gave Ohio to Bush in 2004. And he was called to testify about the 2004 election one day prior to our most recent election. And this was really considered sort of a shot across the bow to the Republican dirty tricks establishment, saying, you better not try anything, we're watching you. And it might be part of the reason why, if the election was at all, free and fair, that was part of it. They were worried about engaging in certain things. But he said a lot of stuff at the end of this interview with Amy Goodman that had nothing to do with that. It had more to do with the election in general. And I wanted to read this part of it to you. I'm also linked to it in case you want to see the whole thing. And actually, I recommend it. And when you get to the point which he starts talking about what I say, it's right at the end, so you can just turn it off at that point because you've heard the rest. Unless you want to hear him say it. He says his own stuff pretty well. But the point is, I can't stress this strongly enough, we're dealing not just with a shocking accident, if that's what it was, and a convenient one. We're dealing not even just with a particular lawsuit that, really requires vigorous promotion. The important point here is that this is all about our elections. That's what this is about. This is about democratic self-government. The fact that Obama won so handily has caused a lot of us to sit back and relax. There's been a lot of popping of champagne corks and people drawing the conclusion that the system must work because our guy won. Well, this is not a sports event. This is self-government. In fact, the evidence strongly suggests, and we haven't had a chance to talk about this since Election Day, that Obama probably won by twice as many votes as we think. Probably a good 7 million votes for Obama were undone through congressional vote suppression, through vote suppression and fraud, because the stuff was extensive and pervasive in places where you wouldn't expect it. The Illinois Ballot Integrity Project was monitoring the vote in DuPage County, right next door to Obama's, backyard, Cook County. And two of them, in only 2 precincts on Election Day, saw with their own eyes 350 voters show up, only to be turned away, told, you're not registered. People who were registered, who voted in the primary. All but one of these people was black. That's in Illinois. People at the Election Defense Alliance have discovered, from sifting through the numbers, an 11-point red shift in New Hampshire. That means that there's a discrepancy in Obama's disfavor, primarily through the use of optical scan machines. An 11-point discrepancy in the Republicans' favor, okay? You start to combine this with all the vote suppression, all the disenfranchisement, all the vote machine flipping that went on this election, you realize, okay, Obama won. But millions of Americans, most of them African American and students, were not able to participate in any civic sense. Ironically, a lot of the same people, who would have been disenfranchised and were disenfranchised before the Civil Rights Movement. So the fact that a black president was elected, well, cause for jubilation, see, ought not to take place at the expense of a whole lot of our fellow citizens who seem to have been disenfranchised on racial grounds. My point is very simply this. We've got to get past the victory of Obama and look seriously at what our election system is like. Or else, I promise you, see, this setup that was put in place in this last election in 2004 and in 2000, okay, will still be here in 2010, still be there in 2012. So we've got to take steps to do something about it now. That's what I've been saying. And I really think that people ought to look into this Connell thing, because it is the most hugely suspicious thing. As he points out, the official story is just full of holes. I mean, the plane disintegrated in a fireball, and yet a trooper who never met him before identified the guy immediately at the scene. They said it was bad weather, except that the person at the airport that the guy was flying to and almost, had made it to, said that the bad weather had passed 2 hours prior. And somehow, mysteriously, this experienced flyer not only had his plane run out of gas, allegedly, but if he ran out of gas, how did the plane produce the enormous fireball? Wow. I mean, any 3-year-old could, figure out why this story is wrong. And yet, this is not front page news on every single newspaper. This is not leading the news every single night on every mainstream media newscast, like it should be. Because, the president's best friend is evil. Fox commentator Karl Rove is evil. And I hate using words like evil, because generally speaking, evil means I don't care to know what this person's reasons are, but you know what? Considering what I'm pretty sure Rove has done in his life, I don't care to know what his reasons are. And you can feel free to argue. This is Zach Elliott.